And now for something completely different. Get the slides up into here. Again, shout out to Erica for a great meeting, to the Scientific Program Committee. And Ron, we were asked to kind of do this. It was kind of like, define AI. And we're going to have to talk about, should we use it, should we not be using it? Your disclosure is not really relevant. So what is AI and artificial intelligence? And you can kind of break it down into three. Are we talking about machine learning in healthcare? Are we talking about natural language processing? Or are we talking about robotics applications? 10 years ago, we were having this conversation. And 5 years ago, we started talking about robotics and some navigation type stuff, which has been around for a while. But the top two have been obviously very top of mind for the last 2 years. So you're in the clinic, and a patient comes in, your MA says, my leg, the patient's coming in with my leg hurts. So it could be relatively simple. It could be a 40-year-old fireman that developed left leg pain and weakness. That's relatively straightforward, but there's nuance there. He's a fireman. He slipped off a ladder. It's going to be a work comp thing. All these kind of nuances are going to play in to the outcome of this patient. It could also be complicated. You're going to be a 67-year-old with predominant left leg pain, but also has significant stenosis and a low-grade slip. What are you going to do with that person? Now she's Medicare and it's medical thing. Then you can have a complex patient where it's a 40-year-old with chronic pain, opioid addicted, work comp, who's already had multiple fusions, but his left leg is his predominant pain. And how do you code that? So, all these things talk about coding. So all those different patients are going to come in. M5416, that's a lumbar radiculopathy, but you're going to code it as a disc, you're going to cause it a stenosis. It's all these things here, and that's somewhat relevant when we start talking about AI. And I encourage anybody who's interested in this book, AI Revolution in Medicine by Peter Lee. But all these learned modules are dependent upon what they're trained on. You are what you eat in that. So again, here's a simple patient. Again, herniated disc at left. So I think no real argument on how you're going to treat this. Here's that complicated patient, low-grade slip, really big stenosis, zebra sign on the facet joints. How are you going to fix that? And then obviously the complicated, 40-year-old, this is much more nuanced on how you're going to fix. And the outcomes from all three of those patients are going to be completely different. So the challenges for how AI are going to affect that patient you're sitting with in the clinic with my left leg hurts and all those different things. And what are you going to use AI for? AI is costly. You're going to use it for, prior authorization. Are you going to use it for robotics? You're going to do all those different things. So what is AI in the clinic? How is that really going to help you? So we charge our pro AI folks talking. This is Kevin Foley, Mo Bydon. They're going to talk about why we should be using AI. And the most famous language processing robot of all time is C3PO. All right? And he's the biggest thing. So Kevin Foley is going to talk about that. And the other famous one is R2-D2. You can't do a mission without having R2-D2. I think everybody's going to agree to that. But we're also going to talk about, let's keep our professionalism human. And Steve Glassman is going to give that major point with Scott Meyer, and keeping that this is not what we really want to do. This is not the approach we're looking for. And then, hopefully in hindsight, we really should not have been doing this. So again, turn this over to our talented staff. Here's the patient. This is right in the middle of the road. You're sitting there, left leg pain, mild slip, big stenosis. How are we going to use AI in your clinic process? I did tell everybody not to use it for robotics and navigation. That's a whole different topic, et cetera. But how are you going to use the LM and the PLMs to be using it in your office? So again, Kevin, I think you're up first.
Thanks, Jack, and good evening, everyone. Those are my disclosures. So first, I'd like to make some comments about my friend and my opponent in tonight's debate, Dr. Steve Glassman. Dr. Glassman, renowned spine surgeon, professor of orthopedic surgery at the University of Louisville, past president of SRS, well-respected researcher in such fields as spinal outcomes. So, I thought to myself, how could such an accomplished, seemingly intelligent fellow be so anti-technology? So I had to do some digging. And lo and behold, I discovered that Dr. Glassman, on some of his free weekends, has been moonlighting as an anti-AI Luddite. And, it goes beyond this, so there is some photographic evidence of some nefarious activity. On one occasion, Steve apparently broke into the Tesla Optimus factory, and apparently Steve does not like AI-enhanced robots. And then on another occasion, we learned that he had driven down to Memphis, xAI's supercomputer is in Memphis and its server facilities. Well, because they caught Steve, destroying some of their servers. This still doesn't explain, though, why the animus, why the tremendous dislike for AI. Well, I think I've got the answer. On one of his little weekend adventures, Steve was detected by an AI-enhanced cyborg. And it's appropriate that the subtitle of tonight's debates is Feel the Heat, because you could say that Steve was surely feeling the heat here, when this cyborg, chased him out of the facility. So why be all in on AI? Well, it's because simply it's the future. It's a tremendous productivity tool. It enhances human performance, and it helps us improve what we can do. Spine surgery is ripe for AI. We just heard a debate about, how are we going to fix this deformity and why, and what are the outcomes like? Tremendous disagreement, tremendously different approaches to similar problems. There's got to be a better answer than that, and AI is going to help us find that. We're also faced with things like imaging and documentation volume that start to exceed our capabilities to keep up, and administrative and regulatory burdens that seem to rise every week. AI is going to help us deal with those things. It will help with patient selection because AI can integrate a tremendous amount of data and help predict how patients are going to do. And this will enhance our ability to improve our decision-making and share this information with our patients. One of the things AI excels at is image analysis and interpretation. And whether it's doing simple things like measuring alignment parameters, you know how tedious it is to draw those things out on standing films. Well, AI can do that automatically for us. It can do more, though. It can look longitudinally at an array of films from a single patient and compare them. And it can compare whole groups of patients across multiple imaging longitudinal studies. And so even detect some meaningful radiographic changes that might escape the human eye. We know we can use AI for surgical planning. AI algorithms can predict trajectories and such things as alignment targets, but can do much more. There are efforts going on right now, for example, to take simple fluoroscopic images and create realistic 3D navigatable data without having to do a CT and expose patients to substantial radiation. Those of us involved in PROMs know how resource intensive and expensive it is and time consuming. Well, AI can help us do that. It's going to cut the cost and increase our efficiency in these tasks. And then administrative relief. I mentioned that we're all burdened with the increasing a number of administrative things we're asked to do on top of taking care of patients and performing surgery. It's one of the things that drives burnout in our field. Well, AI is absolutely set up to help us deal with all of those burdens and lighten our mix of chores. Now, are there risks to AI? Of course. AI can hallucinate. We're all aware. Some people worry about something called de-skilling, which is supposedly where your brain relies so much on AI, you lose the ability to think. And there are going to be challenges with integrating AI into our day-to-day workflow. There are absolutely regulatory issues here, but these are going to be worked out. And the key takeaways I would tell you is that AI can improve patient and procedure selection, our precision, and the consistency of our results. It supports, but it doesn't replace clinical judgment. And I believe that surgeons who engage early with the AI revolution will shape this. It'll shape the adoption of AI in spine surgery and medicine itself and help guide the evolution of AI in our field. Will it replace surgeons? Absolutely not. AI is a support tool. It won't be autonomous in our lifetimes. Surgeons, I guarantee you, are going to remain accountable and responsible for care decisions. Society needs someone to blame and someone to sue. Who is liable if AI is wrong? Well, surprise, surprise, we are, right? AI recommendations are advisory, and again, those regulatory frameworks are still evolving. Can we trust AI? I would say yes, but trust but verify. Again, it can hallucinate. AI will always require human oversight. Human oversight is going to remain essential, so it's not going to replace you. AI is going to drive spine surgery into the future. It'll allow spine surgeons to become even better. It will improve patient outcomes, and it's going to not only enhance our productivity, it's going to improve our quality of life. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Kevin. On the other side, that we're still the art of neurosurgery versus the science and the statistics. Steve Glassman will give us a counter to that.
Well, thanks, Jack. So it's a pleasure to be here. I'm Steve Glassman. I'm from the Leatherman Spine Center in Louisville. Let's see, and AI is not working because I can't do. What would you? There we go. Those are my disclosures we don't care about. So it's a pleasure to be involved in this debate on artificial intelligence or the need to keep the human touch in what we do. I have to admit to being a little bit nervous because of the rumors that no one ever debated Kevin and survived. But well, it's what I was assigned, so I'll do my best. I think we should start with defining AI, and Jack talked about that. But I think anybody who's ever worked with Kevin knows that he's a little confused about this. So just, Kevin, so you know, it turns out Darlene will not sort this out for me is not AI. Okay. Right? Should be part of what you understand. And I think that if you want to learn about AI, it's in every publication that we read. It's even in the publications that Kevin reads. And so with all that exposure, we've come to understand what AI is. AI is the thing that creates knowledge from chaos. And that's great. And I think at this point, we all understand how that works. It's by magic. But not just any magic, not like clown magic, right? You need magic with the human touch, really high quality magic. And I know that Kevin actually believes this, and I looked for that human touch, and I found it in this empathetic gaze. And I found it in his biography where he is the chief innovation officer here and the chief robotics officer there. And I found him to be the esteemed neurosurgeon, and that sounded very empathetic and human to me. Although then I was told that esteemed is like the alert that this was written by ChatGPT. So I don't know. But I knew that I would find the deep human touch if I looked hard enough, and I found it in this thing he does. It's his local access cooking show. And it's something he's been devoted for. And in this episode, he's teaching this lady how to make it something that looks kind of cannibalistic. Apparently, it's when the surgery doesn't go well, you can make bone broth. And he's kind and is giving this nice lady the recipe at the end of this. So I think it's important to remember that AI is a tool, and it's a tool for humans. And there are lots of things that it can do and will do for us. It manages large volumes of data. It reproducibly identifies similar data elements. Maybe it'll recognize patterns we didn't recognize. And so if we take something that seems like a use that would be good for us, right? We want data-driven patient selection, so we want the right procedure and the right patient. We want to avoid complications. We want to improve outcomes. And there's been a lot of effort of AI and risk stratification to do this. And what it's done for us essentially is avoid complications. It's actually done that pretty well. And it tells you don't operate on high-risk patients. Most of you don't need that, but for Kevin to have a clue that this patient isn't a good candidate, AI is helpful in that application. So he promised us like this flying car, but instead what he gave us is a vacuum robot that spies on us. So some innovation, but not really the innovation that we were looking for. And why is that? Why haven't AI algorithms, been all that we sort of expected of them in spine? And one of the reasons is because they just don't understand everything they look at, right? And that's solved with something called labeling. It's inherent to using AI. And this is an example. If you show the computer this picture and you tell them this is a bus and this is a car and this is a traffic light, the next time it looks at it, it knows those things. But if you show them this, right, is this normal aging? Is there pathology there? If there's pathology, what pathology is relevant, right? So there are companies that do nothing but this labeling kind of process. And if you read what's on their websites, it explains how they do it, right? For fields like medicine and science that require domain experts so that they can appropriately identify the information. In other words, what AI needs is the human touch. Now, that works in a lot of areas. In spine, maybe not so well, because you show this to 6 different spine surgeons, and there's just not going to be uniform agreement about what this means or what we're seeing there. And so there have been efforts to try to help AI along in that process. And this is an example from the registries where we have an AI smart form, so the surgeon can say why I did the operation. What was my indication for the surgery? Right, it adds the human touch to the data. And so getting back to Jack's question, which I'll point out that Kevin never talked about once, is, can it differentiate these different levels of spondylolisthesis? Can AI alone answer this question? And actually, we have real data on that. So this is data from the registry that looks at extracting data from a database, just using the computer versus using the human added smart forms. And I'll point out for you that Kevin is actually an author on this paper. And what it shows is that for the thing we do best, spondylolisthesis, if you just let the computer run without the smart forms, it gets it right about 75% of the time. But that's the low-hanging fruit. Think about something else that we do really commonly. We do T-lifts for mechanical collapse and foraminal stenosis. Common, good operation. You know how often the computer gets that one? 0. Because there's no ICD-10 code, so it doesn't know what to go look for. So, by using smart forms, we're crowdsourcing for labeling for AI for the future, right? So the human touch. So in conclusion, AI's coming, but spine's not really ready for it. AI can't analyze what it doesn't recognize, and at least at this point, human input's still critical. Thanks.
Thanks, Steve. For a rebuttal on that, we're going to ask Bydon to weigh in.
Thank you. All right, I'll provide the 3-minute rebuttal, and I'd like to do it actually without slides. I'm going to appeal to your sense of logic here. So we have cases of L4-5 pathology, and this is just absolutely wonderful. There's a very famous cranial neurosurgeon who told his department, the finances of our department rest between L4 and L5. So it's a very fitting pathology. It's something that we treat all the time. And there's 3 different cases of it that Jack gave us. There's a simple case, there's a slightly more complicated case, and then a complex case. So we have an L4-5 disc, a spondy with bilateral facet hypertrophy, and then a prior fusion with Harrington rods. And so when you look at those cases, including for the most simple case, and I'll tell you my hypothesis, and then I'll give you evidence towards it. There are so many options. The reason that it's difficult in spine, the reason that coding is difficult in spine, the reason that registries are difficult in spine, there are so many different ways to skin the cat. So I would propose to you, not just for the complicated case is AI useful. Take that most simple case. There are so many different modalities of what you could do, right? You could offer a decompression alone. You could offer decompression, and different people in the audience will agree with different ones of these modalities, but you could offer decompression and discectomy. You could offer T-lift, P-lift, A-lift, with or without posterior screws, maybe PERC, maybe not. O-lift, with or without posterior screws, maybe PERC, maybe not. X-lift, with or without posterior screws, maybe PERC, maybe not. Single position lateral. So there are 12 different options that you could offer for those pathologies that have been presented. And if you don't think that this is a real world scenario, one of our esteemed colleagues, not ChatGPT esteemed, but one of our esteemed colleagues ran their own case of lumbar radiculopathy by several, very known people, prior chairs, things of that nature of this very section, and ran it by 4 surgeons and got 4 different opinions. And we were joking that it's surprising there weren't 5 opinions from the 4 surgeons, because one of the surgeons might change their mind as they're describing their own opinion. So AI can be extremely helpful in this interaction. First, many of you might use AI Scribe on Doximity or other options now in Epic and within Cerner and elsewhere, and so you might use an AI Scribe. AI can help with automated measurements. AI can help planning PERC screws for you if that's the approach that you're going to take. AI can help providing you with outcomes for each different approach and enable joint decision making with the patient. And then, so finally, AI is useful in all of those different parameters. And then I would say to not use AI and to be against it, no offense, gentlemen, but this would be like driving to AAA to pick up your map so you can drive, across country, where most of us wouldn't really do that anymore because there's something just much simpler. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Mo. And our last speaker will be Scott Meyer.
All right, so I don't have to do much because it sounds like Kevin and Mo made our argument. So let's keep our profession human. The debate was all in on AI, not is AI good, can we use AI? It was all in, which means we're going to give up autonomy if we go that route. So there's a lot of problems with AI. It struggles with complex revision cases, which is one of the cases that actually we were asked to look at. It can miss instability or subtle neurologic signs. It's really limited in rare pathologies because we just don't have the data sets to follow that. And you're lacking clinical context when you pump something into an algorithm. Automation bias and de-skilling, as residents learn with AI, they lose their skill to do it. And the surgeon ultimately, as Kevin pointed out, retains the final responsibility. So the take-home is exactly what Kevin said. AI is a tool. It's decision support only, and if you can't justify it without AI, reconsider. Surgeon judgment remains the standard of care. But to do this differently, I want everybody to close their eyes and think about somebody that they love deeply. And now imagine that person was a patient that was presented by Dr. Knightley early on. And you're going to help this person, so you're going to go online and you're going to find a good surgeon to take care of this patient. So after much research, you find the Glassman Meyer Spine Institute, and you set up an appointment. You're greeted by compassionate, caring physicians that are going to harness decades of surgical experience, great hands. They might work with your loved one, talk to your primary care doctor, come up with a surgical plan, explain the surgery, answer any questions, set reasonable expectations, and then you're going to go into the operating room, and this guy's an artist. He's going to absolutely do a great job. You know it. He's got years of experience. I'm going to provide at least mediocre retraction, and the surgery is going to go great. And as you emerge from anesthesia, you're going to have this kind man having your hand and say, everything went great. You're great. Now, alternatively, say the wait is too long, you pick up the phone, you call, and you can't get in with the Glassman Meyer Spine Institute. So you got to settle for the Foley, Bydon, all in on AI Spine Institute. So you go, you're greeted by this bot, you load up your radiographic material, you load up all your information, and you get an email the next day about what your surgery is going to be and what the surgery date is. You get questions, but man, you're out of luck. So meanwhile, Kevin and Mo are on their third beer, 100 miles away, celebrating Kevin's first ever hole-in-one. Kevin stares deep into Mo's eyes and says, we should have done this years ago. Your loved one's rolling into the OR and you go to the waiting area. And you're sitting there and all of a sudden you get an alert on your phone. The unthinkable has happened. The all-in on AI Spine Institute has malware that's been loaded up, AI-designed malware. It's too late. You run to the operating room, you grab the doors, but surgery is already on. And it's a catastrophe, an absolute catastrophe. Robots designed in the likeness of Mo Bydon and Kevin Foley botch the operation, and your loved one dies. I rest.
Okay, everybody, again, just in the interest of time, we'll keep it there. Winners are, hold that. The human touch. Right. Thanks, everybody.
Fun.